Let's talk about a thing I've noticed in my own play and in other people's play. And this is subconscious XP allocation. So what is this? So this is this thing where, let's say you want to train up a unit, right? That unit's going to need EXP. Doesn't matter who the unit is, what the unit wants to do. Every single unit needs kills or heals or something to gain EXP. And if you do not actually train the unit, it will never actually pop off. So if you have like 3 go-to units that get all of your kills, the other 3 or 4 or however many combat units you're running probably won't level up as much. They'll naturally start to fall off because of stats. And you'll be in this situation where you have to play catch up. So right now, my Jade is underleveled, and this is an example. I'm using my own save file as an example. This Jade is underleveled because, frankly, I haven't been setting up kills for her and feeding her enough. And also, she doesn't have a silver great axe, which she should have, so that she can one-shot enemy physicals pretty easily. But right now, we're setting up tomahawk kills for her so that she can start getting some level ups. And she's doing all right. She also needs her Erica unit, needs my Erica unit to be on bravery mode, or at least to be engaged so that she has more damage. But this is a perfect example of a unit who can pop off on this class, but because she hasn't been getting enough XP, she's been, you know, basically underleveled. Like, look at this Anna. This Anna's level 30, this Jade is basically like level 20. So like, this is like the difference between them. It's like 10 levels. She's like been a main combat unit, and she's been making me tons of money, so naturally I want to keep feeding her kills. And this is like with that, like, this is like in the unconscious, or the unconscious brain or whatever. Like, you're not even the subconscious, you're just like feeding this thing kills. You're feeding the wolf. I think there was like this Native American saying, or I guess they call them indigenous people now. I think that's the correct term, the politically correct term. We'll say the indigenous people. Well, I think Native American is still fine. All right, so anyways, there's a saying that if you feed, there are like 2 wolves in your brain, right? And there's a good wolf and a bad wolf, and the more you feed either of them, the better off that wolf will be. So if you keep feeding the good wolf, you'll end up a good person. If you keep feeding the bad wolf, you'll end up a bad person. And right now, Anna's kind of like a bad wolf in a way, because if she gets a kill, she gets like minimal XP because of the way XP works. So the higher level you are, the less XP you get in relation to other enemies. So if enemies are, you know, like levels below you, you get almost no XP. So you might as well allocate that XP to a unit who needs it, so that that unit can rise up to your team instead of just continually feeding it to your hard carries. Now, it's convenient. Now this is why this happens, and I think this happens to a lot of people. I think this is very common, and I'm guilty of this too. And this is why I think like low manning is actually easier than running a full team. So it's easier to run like fewer units, because then you know, okay, these 4 combat units have really good passives, will kill whatever I have them attack. They'll double, they'll 1 round, they'll survive the combat. If they get counterattacked, they'll be fine. But these other characters, you know, like if I have Jade go fight in combat, like right now she's about to get meteored, or let's see, yeah, she's about to get meteored for 52 magical attack, or maybe, hold on, 49 magical attack. So that will basically kill her, and if this guy does damage, which he does, he can last hit her. So right now she's in danger. So it's easier to take the convenient option of feeding your hard carries that are like 10 levels higher. But this is like I guess you could say it's like a pitfall. I don't like to say things are pitfalls. If I do, it's usually ironically. But it's basically a pitfall of allocating excess EXP to combat units that are already popping off that don't need it, when you could be giving it to other units on your team to allow them to level up. Now, that being said, should you still just dump all of your XP into hard carries and run smaller amounts of damage dealers? You can, and it's probably better to do that, honestly. You basically get the benefit of having super units that always function, and you never have to worry about their damage or their stats, especially if they're like the right units. And now, there are units that can perform like basic like poke damage tasks or like staff utility tasks that don't require investment. These units can be decent. So for example, if you have a bunch of like sages on your team that you know are never going to double, you hand them like a Thoron and some staffs and they'll be fine. If you do that with other unit types like warrior to shoot down flyers and deal chip damage, that can be fine. So those are like low investment unit types that don't need training. So like this Jade tank, like she wants to be going for kills right now. She wants to level up. So we're going to try to level her up, ideally. That's like the point of a tank, right? Like a tank is supposed to hold positions, be able to tank multiple enemies. And right now she's like under leveled. She's not really getting the resources she needs. She probably needs Resolve Plus and Gentility Plus, which are kind of expensive. But in the new era of the well, it's really no big deal. But this is something I've noticed that I do, and I've also noticed other people do it. And I've also noticed when people try things out, they'll kind of like try it out half-assed, where they'll dump, you know, a little bit of resources in a unit and kind of use it, but then mostly just feed kills to the things they like. That's really the thing. Your bias of what units you like is going to greatly influence who you feed kills to. So if you really like Aleer, you're probably going to feed Aleer more kills. If you're like Chloe, you're probably going to feed her more kills. This is like subconscious. Now, if the unit is good and you're just going off of performance, it's like right now Amber kills this. Like, okay, Amber can kill this, cool. Now I had to set his speed takers up, but Tamara can kill this. So if I had to choose, like I know both of these can kill this, like pretty much most of the units on my team can kill this mage, but I would choose the one that makes the most sense. So it's like, all right, well, is Tamara more tanky? Is she gonna be tanking? Then I can send her in. Does it not matter? I can send him in. Does he need more speed takers? So like this is like a small decision. Like once you know your units can one round and once you know that they're online, you can really just like select who you need for the situation and then use them optimally. But when you're still building up units, or if a unit falls behind by like 10 levels, you're in this situation where you have to like play catch up. And usually you get into the situation because of subconscious play where you're like, all right, Anna's really good. She's making me money. She one rounds everything she fights. Just send her in. Just send her in to kill like 4 things. I'll have her kill a thing. She'll dance. Like we'll dance Anna. She kills the second thing. Maybe we bonded shield or chain guard her. She enemy phases a 3rd thing in a single player phase, enemy phase. So she's killed 3 things. You know, she's still at full health. Fram took a little bit of damage. Reset her with quality time. Do it again. Like you can do these combos, and you can play in a way that completely deprives other units of XP. And I think this Chloe is in like a kind of similar situation. She's only a little bit underleveled, but like the Jade is like a clear example of a unit who's like underleveled on the team and is also missing like a good forge outside of the Tomahawk. This Tomahawk +2 is okay, but it could be better. It could be like, you know, Silver Great Axe as well with an engraving, or Tomahawk +3. Maybe she has Gentility Plus and I actually engage the Erica unit for bonus damage. Or she even runs like Axe Power. But this is just an example of someone who was neglected in a playthrough. Now this is going to happen. This is probably going to happen to you in your teams. There's so many deploys in this game that statistically it's going to happen. No, it's just very likely to happen. You'll forget about a unit. Like right now, Lyndon is just on the team. I didn't even deploy him. I actually deploy less units than this current map allows, so I just randomly have Lyndon, so I just had to hand him like a tome. But he's not even in this run, he's just kind of here for the ride. Honestly, I do think like 7 and 8 manning the game makes it easier, because then you don't have to worry about stuff like this. Now, the easiest way to avoid things like this is to create units who are like sages that can staff bot, because then they're always getting EXP from staff botting. And then they can also use Thoron to deal chip damage as needed. So that way the source of EXP is not competing with combat units. So you could run like 3 or 4 sages that can also obstruct, restore, heal, freeze, silence, whatever, warp. And they can also deal chip damage, especially if you use hit engravings on the Thorons. And they can also run quality time, so they're constantly healing. You can run like quality time canter, so they have cheap builds, they bring utility, they bring damage, and then they don't compete with your main combat units. So in the case of this Jade though, she is kind of directly competing with this Tamara. So like that's like an issue. So I'm basically running 2 main tanks, and you only really need 1, especially if you're running bonded shield. Like you barely need a tank if you're running bonded. If you're running bonded, at best you need 1 other tank. If you run 3 tanks, you can do it, but then they're competing for Ike, which is really the biggest problem. Now there's other tanks too, like there's like avoid tanks, but Generally speaking, you only need like 1 to 2 tanks. And Jade tank on Ike is pretty good, but it wants like axe power. So the Tomahawk one-shots enemy like mages, and then she can use Silver Great Axe, and then like Great Aether AoE some dudes. So yeah, that's it for this one. I just wanted to talk about like subconscious investment, which I think is a serious thing, because you might not even know you're doing it. That's where it gets insidious, where this is where people look at a unit they don't like and they're like, oh, I don't want to use that unit, I don't like it, and then they rule it out as a good unit. So this happens like Amber all the time. This is like the main thing that happens to Amber. This happens to Tamara too, to some degree. I actually used to think Tamara was bad in my first playthrough also, but this was also before the well, so it was harder to get her damage online. But arguably, the Erica build that I ran on her, it's like speed +5. It could have been like speed +3. Use a speed tonic, and then it was gentility plus. Or no, you get gentility plus. It was resolve and resolve plus. That's a 2500 SP build, and that was a really good build that popped off. So even without the well, you can min-max a lot of these units. You just have to find the solution. You have to identify the problem, figure out what's wrong with the build, and most builds can be fixed, to be honest. Most builds, most characters, their weaknesses can be patched up with passives, with emblem rings, with the occasional stat booster, depending on who's getting what stat boosters. So yeah, that's it for this one. Definitely like and subscribe if you enjoyed this or found this interesting, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.